And all right, we're going. Welcome to Data Analytics for Business Office Hours. It's Tuesday, October 3rd, and our guest today is Bob Newstadt. And we're going to talk all about the ins and outs of the job search and interviewing and what hiring managers are looking for in BI, business analytics candidates. So a little bit of introduction about Bob. He's had a lot of experience doing everything from video game programming to data engineering to, it seems like the majority of the experience is leading BI teams and business intelligence operations. Bob, does that sound accurate?
Yeah, thanks. That is accurate. I've had a career doing a lot of different things, and but mostly in the data space and working with data, trying to make sense of data.
Cool. So the point of today's discussion is to step through basically the ins and outs of the interview process. And I guess, Bob, do you want to just go ahead and start?
Yeah, I'll start. I have a few things prepared. I thought, what are the things that maybe people don't know about the interview process or might have misunderstanding about it? So I'll talk about those, and I'll be glad to take some questions.
Sure. I'll throw this out there just because it's something I've heard a lot. Is one question is asking about the interview process for, I've heard this from numerous students, many students, about, I guess, their experience level. So if they're coming into the process with quote unquote low or no professional experience doing data analysis, very common question. What would you, could you speak to experience level and going into the interview process? And before you do that, though, if there's any other questions from anyone on the call.
Yeah, well, I handle that. Yeah, I think it is a common situation. A lot of people are training or looking to move into the analytics area and don't have a lot of experience. But I'd say one thing people might not know about the interview process is most of the work happens before you ever get the interview. Mm-hmm. And I'd just like to speak to that for a few minutes, especially as you're positioning yourself for the right positions. A lot of it is you have to ask yourself what you want and what you're best at and what you'd like to spend 8 or more hours doing a day and who you want to do that with. I think if you can be a little introspective, answer some of those questions, and then you'll be able to focus your job search. And then the result is when you're in the interview, you've found companies that are a better fit for you, where you can confidently say, this is what I know, this is what I don't know, I can add value here. And so that's a lot of it, I think, for especially people new in the area. I'll talk about that a bit more, about how you can prepare for the interview and focus on your strengths. But basically, I think there's endless demand for analytics work and looking at the data, making sense of data, and in good times and bad times, and so there's a lot out there, for the right position. You'll see a lot of positions that aren't being filled that are very hard to fill because companies want every possible skill. But most analytics positions can be learned, and companies need a lot of people doing them. So start off with that mindset, and I think you'll be well prepared to find the right kind of companies. So that's before the interview. Is knowing what you want. You'll be able to express, what kind of value you add, and go for the right kind of jobs. One other thing is about interviews is that people might not understand that it's really a multi-phase process. I think very seldom do you meet someone, shake hands, and then you get a job a few minutes later? In fact, it's usually companies want to bring in multiple candidates. They're afraid of hiring the first candidate they see. Pretty good reasons, and there are a lot of people that have to be consulted. So because of that, it's in you should expect multiple steps in this interview process. You somehow get the company's attention through a referral through a friend or posting a resume and such. But once you get in contact with them and go into the interview process, it's a phone interview, then it's another phone interview, then it's a test, then it's a take-home test, then it's something online, then it's a tech interview, and on till you're maybe on site, if it's actually an on-site job, and you're talking to various people, all with different agendas and interests. So just be prepared for that too. In that it can be a slog. It can take longer than you want, and it's perfectly all right to be interviewing with multiple companies. So take advantage of that time and the delays built in. One other thing I'd also suggest is as far as timing is when a job posting first appears, that is the best time to get their attention. There's a lot of postings that are out there they aren't even really hiring for. There's kind of these dead postings, so it's really hard to tell what's even available. But the newest ones have a much better chance. So that's one heuristic you can use.
Bob, can I just ask one real quick? You had mentioned a take-home test and a tech interview. What's kind of the difference between those two?
Right. Yeah, it's the take-home test would be like a project where they email you a project to analyze this set of data or look at this open source data and draw some conclusions from it. Or maybe they give you a much more specific question, but it's kind of a canned little project, so that I actually think most of the time it's to see the people that won't even try and don't come back. I'm sure it weeds out a lot of people just giving them a project. But so that's the take-home test or whatever. And it's really to save the company time from interviewing a bunch of people who aren't even willing to try. And then usually after that, there'll be some review of it. But the technical interview is usually in person or on the phone, and it's a series of technical questions with someone whose expertise is technical, and they've been asked to make sure this person knows about X, Y, and Z, and they'll put you through the ringer about various technologies, things like that. So there are two different steps of the interview process. You should be wary of companies that don't ask you anything technical, huh? I would say too, on the other side.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Good question. Yeah. Anyone else out there? Yeah. You have something, Chris?
Oh yeah, I mean, I had a follow-up to that. Do you? So it sounds like we covered a couple. So there's the take-home. There's you can do an in-person, like a whiteboard type interview. I've had those, and then in between, I've also seen like a screen sharing, like pair programming exercise. Do you have I'm curious what you have seen or what you do with candidates.
Well, I've actually seen all the ones you mentioned, but I think I do it differently in my next hire. I probably would give some sort of take-home project, but that's limited. Like, spend an hour on this and tell me what you find out, or something like that. But what I found is that when I ask very particular questions, analytics is a very wide field, and technology is very wide. So when I go into the interview and asking, do you know this? Do you know this? And there's a long, long list, I don't really get very far. It's not very efficient. So more of my interview style, I'll certainly ask some particular questions, but my interview style is to try to be more efficient. And two things that I do to be more efficient are, one, I'll say, well, on a scale 1 to 10, how well do you know technology? Let's say SQL. And then people will answer, and then I'll give a question geared to that level of expertise. Now, if you say you're a 10, I'll give you very hard questions. And if you say you don't know it that much, I'll still give you some questions just to calibrate it. So that's one thing I do to be more efficient. Is I try to adapt to the candidate's experience. The other thing I do is I spend more time on what did you do, and tell me what you did in a project, what you did in a class, what you learned from this funnel analysis or whatever. And I want to see how broad a set of skills person has. So I end up asking a lot of questions. Specifically, I'll ask questions until someone says, I don't know. And then I've reached the limit of their knowledge or have a really rough idea. And I can move on to the next thing.
Real quick, I'm wondering as well. Sorry, I seem to be the only person asking questions. But I'm wondering how much of your interview would be statistics based versus how much of your interview would be, I guess, technical knowledge of R and programming languages or SQL or different things like that.
I guess it depends the position I'm hiring for and what tasks they can do. I'll often make a list of, the tasks that are coming up this quarter, and then try to get an idea, can this candidate, which of these tasks can this candidate help with, or what's the best kind of fit. So I like to match it against real world requests, and there's no shortage of them. Yeah, it's, and then if the task requires knowing some part of the technical stack, I'll ask questions around that. Have you done this? Have you done something similar? Can you tell me about it? What makes you think you can do it? Things like that. There's always a lot of new technology, but it's not all that different. It just changes and changes names, but and I don't expect to find a perfect fit in the candidate. You usually don't have that much time.
Okay, can I ask another question? Sorry, as a follow-up.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that thing about not having the perfect candidate and not having enough time. It's interesting because when I look at different jobs, I'll see, SQL or, R, which are two languages I know, but then I'll see something like for Tableau, which I'm going to learn obviously in this course, but I don't know. Or I'll see something for SAS, which I don't know, or different things like that. So, when you're sitting and you're looking through resumes or whatever, are you looking for the perfect candidate, or are you looking for Mr. Perfect right now? Like Mr. Right or Mr. Right now?
Well, I usually look at it more of a long-term thing. Everyone is going to continue learning, so I really don't expect everyone to have every skill. Plus, what you see out there is just like, hey, maybe the company does have all those things in various projects, but there's probably no one person using all those technologies. They're just casting a wide net. So I'd say if you match 60% of what they want, it's okay to apply. Let them decide. Let them decide not to call you because you don't have some obscure technology. It's their loss.
Thanks.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm more focused on the attitude rather than technology because I think most things can be learned. but it does help to be able to speak to something that will translate. But let me tell you what I'm really. I ask a lot of detailed and technical questions, but what I'm really thinking, I'll tell you what I'm really thinking when I ask these questions. I'm really thinking in the back of my mind with every answer and every response is things like, can you do the job? That's, you don't have to have the right answer to convince me you can do the job. So, tell me about something you did and let me complete the picture. I also like people who can explain what they do, because that is a big differentiator. Yes, maybe you applied some statistical function to something, but if you don't know why, I'm not going to trust you to do it. And if you can't explain it to me, that's a big red flag too. Because part of what I'm asking, even though they're technical questions, is can I trust you? So if you never get to the point where you say, I don't know, I think this person isn't going to really tell me when they don't know. I can't really trust this person. So say it early and often. I think it builds trust if you can say you don't know things. The other thing I'm trying to get at is what are your strengths, particularly, are there any red flags in there? Maybe kind of projects that didn't work well for you, and maybe I'll feel good that those kind of projects aren't part of what I'm hiring for. I try to classify people into specialists. Oh, okay, you're really good with a certain single tool, and maybe that's great for the position, or it isn't, or I need someone that's been called a spanner, where you span the whole stack and can work on any problem, can talk to clients, and can do the technology. I like spanners because sometimes I don't know what projects are coming down the road, and I'd like to have the most flexibility as a manager. One other thing I ask about, and I like to understand, is if you believe in investing in yourself, like you're taking a Springboard course or reading books or keeping up with blogs. I mean, if you don't seem to be investing in yourself, that's a bad sign. And if you're investing in yourself, it means when new tools and technologies come up, you'll be happy to learn those. So these kind of meta values. I'm also asking myself when I'm hearing your responses is, what existing team member are you like? Because after the interview, I'd like to say, oh, they're more like Danny, but a little like Sally, and try to communicate, what the candidate's strengths are and how they would fit into the team. So the real thing a candidate has to convince me is that they're a good fit, and it's not only technology, it's their attitude, the kind of companies they've worked in, whether they need a lot of direction or little direction, or they can work with people, they can communicate. The last thing I'd say that usually crosses my mind is, would I enjoy a cross-country road trip with you? I mean, if I hire you as, your candidate and hire you on, I'm going to spend hours and hours with you. So there is something to likability, and that can go a long way if you ask your friends, how you come across, and you really try to work on those personal skills. That can be the difference. So that's what I'm really thinking, even though I'm asking you about SQL or statistics or your previous work. Is it too sneaky? Because I'm not directly asking you these things, but those are the things that are important to me.
Cool. I have a quick follow-up question from earlier. You mentioned sort of adapting the interview to the candidate's interests and skill level. What do you think about self-ratings when you ask somebody, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? Can you talk a little bit about that? Any red flags? What do you expect to hear, and what are you hoping to hear when people rate themselves?
Well, really, part of it is I'm trying to establish a very quick way to just get a very crude profile of the candidate. So part of it is, can we have this kind of rapport where I ask a specific question and you answer that question? People that don't answer don't do well with me. People walk around it, just say yes or no, or 5 or 2, pick a number. I won't be able to work well with you if you can't answer that kind of simple question. But it could be anything. It could be 1, and then I go, oh, well, you haven't really been exposed to that. Let's go on to the next thing. And we haven't wasted any time.
If someone rates themselves a 10, is that?
Yeah, I think no one's really a 10. I usually say, when I calibrate, I say 1, you've maybe heard about the topic. 10 is you wrote a book on it. Mm-hmm. I mean, so 10 is pretty far out there.
So along those same lines, what turns you off to potential candidates? Like, obviously there's the personality stuff, and I think that's for any job really, but when you're talking specifically about data analysts or the positions that you're trying to fill, what, in addition to some of those personality things, might turn you off to specific candidates?
I think candidates who are stuck on one technology and they have one hammer, they're going to use it to solve every problem. I like more flexibility than that. Candidates who are as far as the technology, candidates who don't have any questions. I need to hire curious people. And when there's no questions, I don't know what the candidate is thinking. If there's a question, I can say, oh, they have a concern about this or that. So I learn very little when someone doesn't ask questions, but like I said, not saying you don't know when you don't know is as much a technical thing as a personality issue. But I don't think there's anything technical. I think sometimes I have trouble finding a question to ask a candidate where that gets them very excited and interested in wanting to talk about something they did. I'll poke around the resume. What about this? Oh, that wasn't really much. And we'll start backpedaling about everything I want to ask about. So that I don't like that either. I say, well, I'm trying to give you an opportunity to shine here. If what I've heard so far in the resume is misleading, then that's kind of a turn off. Cool.
I guess another question that people ask is, how do you do homework on a company or an industry? So you're preparing for the interview. It's the weekend, before you're on site. How do you do your homework on a company?
I actually think it's very hard to figure out what it would really be like working there. Because companies that are of any size have pockets of, things you would like and things you wouldn't like. Mm-hmm. So it's very hard generally. I have gone to some of the websites, with ratings. But if you know any friends who have ever worked there, or you looked at LinkedIn and you find the backgrounds of the people there, that gives me some idea of the kind of people they hire. You should be thinking when you're on the interview, do I want to be like these people you tend to end up like the people you're around, the 5 people you're with. And so you want to kind of find out about it. But I think it's actually very hard to find out about the company. There can be great pockets within a company that's otherwise not even well respected, or a company could be a good fit for you. I had a company always take a survey. Would you recommend our company to your friends? And I always said no, because it just wasn't a good fit for my friends. So it's probably the wrong question.
We had a question come through on chat about tips for those who are fresh out of school.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think it's important to really understand your own strengths especially when you're fresh out of school. Like here's some, like, you probably have a lot of energy, more energy than I do. And you might be able to show you have attention to detail, things like that. Those are really valuable. Just that you've been in school says you're maybe know some of the latest techniques, and you can use that to talk down your competitors who are also vying for this. Well, they may have experience in the older techniques, but I know the new stuff. So I think you really have to understand what you bring to the table, and then find a way to prepare in the interview to get that out. Have a few stories that you want to tell, no matter what the questions are, and work them into the interview that show your strengths. But being out of school, you won't be qualified for all jobs, and I think it might take a little longer to get a job. But if you know more about the more you know about what you want, I think the easier it'll be. And being willing to relocate helps too. It increases your pool. It's kind of a numbers game.
So real quick, if you get the interview and you walk into the place and you're actually in the interview, what advice would you give about when it's time to turn and run? Like when should you not interview with that company? If the boss asks you what, is that a bad, how do you know if it's a bad place to work, I guess?
I don't know. You'll know. I think if there's any kind of intimidation, how you're treated, I think that's important for me. I like to ask, when is the last time someone took a vacation, and try to ask some questions that shows how much work is expected. Maybe there isn't a good work-life balance. Or ask about training, what kind of conferences do people go to? And if they don't go to any, then you've learned something. And if that's important to you, maybe you've learned something that means it isn't the right place for you.
Yeah, and you can trust your gut. Sometimes you get a sense of whether people are happy there or not. Like sometimes it comes across. So yeah, I mean, definitely try to pick up on those cues. It's not always something you can ask for, but you might get a sense.
There's a couple hints that I've come across through past experience. One, if you get a chance, go to the local watering hole. Basically go to any company, the company you interviewed, stand at the door, look around and find the nearest place that serves liquor. Go there at happy hour, and I'm pretty certain you'll run into somebody that works there. That's one of the good ways to determine pulse. But the other thing I would encourage any candidate, try to put those thoughts to the side. You don't have a choice to make until you have an offer letter. Then ask yourself, do I really want to work there? Also, you will find the personality of the company will come out more once they've made an emotional commitment to you, the candidate, and says, I would like to hire you, Christopher. Now, all of a sudden, you've got a little leverage just because they want to hire you. And so now maybe you put in sales terms or sales vernacular, it's called the takeaway. Something that you want an extra week vacation. No, you really don't. but you're going to ask for it anyway because you're going to take it back just to see how they handle your request. It could be, like it says, trumped up, in other words. Maybe that's a horrible pun now. I just realized that. So that's an idea as well. And then during the negotiation process, a lot of times a company will really show their true colors. That's just my experience.
Okay. Well, thanks, Nick. I think we're about out of time here, and I have a hard stop now. But thanks for everyone who's attended and everyone watching after the fact.
Yeah, absolutely. Bob, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom and experience. This is really useful. I took some notes, and this recording is going to be up online for everybody who wants to look at it. So thank you once again.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.